This talk is about question 37 of the assessment task. It's about original predictions about how corrosion rates will be in the deep ocean. And for this question, you need to ask a few questions in your introduction. First of all, what is needed for corrosion? So you need to detail the rusting process. And then you've got to detail what conditions are actually like in the deep ocean. And obviously it's very dark, and it's very cold, and there's very high pressure in the deep ocean. You need to detail how these factors were predicted to have affected corrosion. The first thing, temperature. You know how temperature affects the rate of reaction, so you can talk about how low temperatures should affect the rate of corrosion. Sunlight, yes, it is very dark in the deep ocean, but sunlight's not a factor in corrosion, so I don't think you need to talk about that very much. And usually pressure is not a factor in corrosion or rusting as far as we've talked about, but temperature and pressure combined do affect other things, and they affect salt concentration and they affect oxygen concentration. So temperature and pressure can change the solubility of salt and can change the solubility of oxygen, and therefore, because we know the electrolyte and the oxygen do affect corrosion rates, the temperature and pressure can, in theory, have an effect on corrosion rates. So you need to say how temperature and pressure affect salt concentrations, and then also talk about what the actual salt concentration is in the deep ocean compared to the surface. Is there any difference in the salt concentration compared to the surface based on temperature and pressure? The next thing you've got to talk about is oxygen concentrations. You need to say how normally do temperature and pressure affect oxygen concentration, and normally how would low temperatures and high pressures affect the amount of dissolved oxygen. But obviously there's other factors in play apart from temperature and pressure, so you need to detail what other factors affect the oxygen concentration in the deep ocean, and finally come to the conclusion of what is the actual deep ocean oxygen concentration based on all those factors. And in the conclusion, you need to say, what do we know about the temperature in the deep ocean? What do you know about the salt concentration in the deep ocean? And what do we know about the oxygen concentration in the deep ocean compared to the surface? And when we say surface, we mean surface water. So how do temperature, salt concentration, oxygen concentration, how are they different in the deep ocean to the surface concentration? And therefore, what do we expect the corrosion rate will be?